So mandatory tax group, yes. If you select it as mandatory tax group, you might have to give a mandatory tax group, sales tax group to the vendor. Whatever the vendor account you will create, you have to mandatorily give the tax group. We have a default tax group for vendor, right? When we create a vendor in the vendor master, we have that option. So you might have to give it definitely, or you might, if you're modifying any vendor account, once after this parameter is enabled, for that vendor account also, you might have to give it for sure. If you keep it as no means, yeah, there is an exemption that you can either give it or leave it as an empty default tax group, or you can enter it during the invoice process. Whenever you are creating invoice, there you can enter the tax group manually, or if you give it to the vendor, it will automatically default onto the invoice transaction. So that's so. So if it is mandatory, you have to enable it here. This one, we know this one, post product receipt in ledger. So for posting the product receipt transaction in ledger, you will normally enable this parameter. Once if it is enabled, then only it will get posted into general ledger. Whenever you receive the goods or post the product receipt, the ledger and transaction accrual entry and invoice received getting debited and a purchase accrual getting credited. So that will happen or posted only when you enable this parameter, post product receipt in ledger. Okay. So other than this, I have this invoice tab where I can see default settlement type for credit notes. Select the standard settlement type to use when you create a credit note in the purchase order page. Suppose if you create a credit note in the purchase order page, how system have to handle the settlement of credit note with the invoices it is asking here. So you have certain options: none, open transactions, designated transactions. None means that credit note is not settled with any transaction automatically. It will just come in as a open transaction. Later you can go and manually settle it with the particular invoice or with any other transaction, or if you receive any other payment refund, you can settle it with that refund transaction. It's up to you. But if you say that settle it to open transactions, it might, once you post the credit note, it might automatically get settled with any of the open invoices. So it will get settled with any of the open invoices that are yet to be paid to the vendor. So since this credit note is a kind of payment transaction, right? Where accounts payable account will get debited. So it will get settled with the invoice transaction where accounts payable account will get credited. So both of them will get settled. Or if you select designated transactions, mostly it will get settled with the invoice for which we have done the credit note for. Designated transactions are so to which that credit note is related to which original invoice or purchase order. So to that particular invoices it will get settled. But mostly they will use none only, and they will manually settle such kind of transactions either to the original invoice transaction if it is still open, or if it is already paid and settled, they might get a refund, right? So to the refund transaction they'll settle this credit note too. So that would be one of the option. Then this one, check the invoice number used. See, I have multiple options. See, once if you have used an invoice number and if you post the invoice number, you will not get the same invoice number, right? The vendor would send another invoice number. Mostly for different invoices, you have different numbers. Mostly they won't overlap. In case if there is any such overlap and you are posting the same invoice number again for another invoice, once the invoice is posted with one invoice number, and if you are using the same invoice number for another invoice, system will reject it as a duplicate invoice, or it says that the invoice number has been already used and posted. You can also make the system accept the duplicate so that on the same invoice number, another invoice can be posted. Mostly they don't want to do so because maintaining unique invoice numbers does gives you a detailed data, or separate data. If you have same invoice numbers like for 3-4 invoices, then you will get confused which invoice was sent when, and you can't differentiate those invoices until and unless you check the details within the invoice once again, like prices or lines or any other dates accordingly. So that is why most of them will follow this only, reject duplicates. Okay, if you accept duplicates also, it might also cause some issues in data, or it might also cause some problems in data corruption and all. if it overlaps the data in the tables with the same existing invoice number, then it causes trouble most of the time. So mostly they will have this reject duplicate. Or you also have another option, reject duplicates within fiscal year. Means if the same invoice number is used within fiscal year, then it will reject. If it's being used in other fiscal year, the next year or maybe in the previous year, I mean in the next year or in the next year, so it will accept because it's not within the same fiscal year. So that is why this can use it. Only reject duplicates within fiscal year. Accept means yes, it will accept. Warn in case of duplicates means yes, it will just give you a warning that this invoice number is already used, and it will just give you a warning. Other than that, it doesn't give anything else. So just a warning. So you can still post the invoice, but it will normally give you a warning on the screen saying that this invoice number was already previously used. And although you can post it if you want to. That's one. Other than this, one second. Then I just keep it as a reject duplicate. So here again, see tax exempt number requirement. Earlier the same here, tax exempt number requirement one. The option again we have here. So this is specific to invoices. Okay, that one here is specific to vendors actually. Whenever you create vendor, if the vendor belongs to this particular state, you should have a tax exempt number in place for the vendor details. So this is specific to invoices. So whenever you are creating invoice for like European vendor, you should have a tax exempt number in details of the vendor invoice. So that's what it is, the how different it is. We can see from here. So you can again give EU members or domestic plus EU members or none. So if it is a European member state vendor, for that vendor, if you are creating invoice, you should have tax exempt number in place. If not, it is not required. Then you can also keep none because it's not prominent or not most of them will use it. Then I have this one required document date on vendor invoice. Select the system response if a document date is not specified on a vendor invoice. Document date cannot be after posting date, none, no warning or error message is displayed. An error message is displayed, warning, a warning message is displayed here. So usually when we have two options, right? Document date or invoice date. So document date means nothing but invoice date. So whenever we don't enter any invoice date, system will automatically pick the posting date as invoice date. We have seen that earlier, either for non-purchase order invoices or purchase order invoices. For both of them, system will automatically pick the posting transaction posting date as the invoice date automatically if you don't enter the invoice date. So it is asking here, what should be the what should system do when there is no date given on the invoice? So select the system response if a document date is not specified on a vendor invoice. So if it's not specified on a vendor invoice, what system should do? If you say none means system will automatically pick the posting date as the invoice date. If you say error means it will give an error message. So like this, it will show an error message that invoice date is not given or invoice date is not entered. Or if you say warning means it will generally give you a warning message saying that invoice date is not entered or document date is not entered on the invoice so that you can enter it. If you do not, you can also force the warning. So if it is an error means it will stop you without entering the date. You can't go ahead or post it. But if it is a warning means it's a simple warning message you will get, but still you can post it without the date. Okay, that's the level of stopping. If you say none means it doesn't give any message or any other thing. It will just take the posting date of the invoice transaction as the invoice date automatically. So that is one. Next, I have this option credit note as correction. Select this option to post a credit note as a correction in the ledger. the ledger transaction is posted on the same side as an invoice, but with a negative sign. This option indicates only default method of posting a credit note. You can change the value if you when you update a credit note. Normally, you see this one. When we post a credit note, suppose if you want to post a credit note for a normal vendor invoice journal where vendor account is credited and expense account will be debited. That is a normal vendor invoice journal, right? So if you want to post a credit note for it or reverse it, you can debit the same vendor account in the invoice journal and credit the same expense account, and everything will be reversed, or both of them will both of the accounting effects will get normalized or will become to zero or nullified. But this one credit note as a correction, what it does is it will again credit the vendor account only, but with a negative amount. So either of the ways it will give the same effect. So if I would show you here in the sheet. So when we post a vendor invoice journal, so AP account will get debited for 1000 suppose, and sorry, not debited, it should be credited. Yeah, credited, and expense account will be debited for 1000. Okay, so normally when we post a credit note for this, so AP account will be debited again for 1000 and expense account will be credited for 1000. So it will become zero. Both the effects will become zero. This will become zero account effect. This account effect also will become zero. Both debit and credit are equal. When you use credit note as correction means, so normally as the invoice, same as the invoice, it will credit the accounts payable account and it will debit the expense account, the same entry, but it will give you a negative number like minus 1000 and minus 1000. So, but this nobody want to represent their numbers in minus because the minus numbers are not really considered as actual numbers or real numbers. So mostly they will use positive numbers and this procedure for credit note. If you follow this one also, the accounting effect will be same. If AP is created for 1000 and created for minus 1000, anyway it will become zero. Here also it will become zero expense account, but this is a correct procedure to follow or usual procedure that everyone will follow. If you use this negative values option again, it is not a confusion, but not in a practice. Not most of them will practice this credit note as correction option. So I just keep it as no. Check for W9 form. So this is for the vendors have submitted W9 form or not. You have to select it. See, this is a requirement. So whenever you create a vendor account, if I say W9 form, so whenever you create an invoice for that vendor, system says that W9 form is not submitted by the vendor. You cannot create an invoice. So it will check for the W9 form. So this W9 form is actually given in the vendor master only. It's a requirement for US, I think. If I enable this one, I can't post invoices for such vendors without giving the W9 form or without being submitted the W9 form with us. They would have to submit it to the client, and client would usually update it in the Dynamics master data, vendor master data. The W9 form is submitted. So once if it is submitted, yeah, it will allow for invoicing. If it's not, and if I enable this parameter and it will not allow you to post the invoice, it will show this message. So to exclude a vendor from W9 verification, clear this checkbox. It is saying if you don't want this W9 form verification for the vendor, you can clear this checkbox. Okay, and then activate invoice payment groups. Not actually common, like this invoice groups and payment groups are not really used in Dynamics, but you can use them. Let users add invoices to payment groups. Users can group invoices by a common code so that one invoice in the payment group is settled. The other invoice in the group are included in the same settlement. You cannot clear this option if any invoices are added to the payment group. You first must settle the invoice that are added to the payment group or remove the payment group code for the invoices. See, normally you can group the invoices with a payment group code. So you can create a payment group code, and for all the invoices, suppose if there are 10 invoices pending for a vendor, for all the 10 invoices, you can assign that payment group code. So that whenever one invoice is picked for payment, automatically the remaining invoices amount also will be consolidated or will be added into payment lines depending upon the method of payment you would select. When you assign this payment group to each invoice. So once you have added payment group to invoices, it is saying that in the caption, that you cannot deselect them from the payment. Again, you have to go to the each invoice and remove the payment group that you have assigned to each invoice, so that then you can remove one by one invoices from the payment journal or the payment transaction that you have created. So that's how it works. Invoice payment groups. Mostly these invoice groups and invoice payment groups are not used by any of the client as far as I see, but there might be chance for retail maybe when there are a lot of transaction that has to be settled, they might use this payment group option so that one particular payment group will be assigned to one user in the accounts payable payment team. So he will handle that payment group payments for such invoices. It is saying something. Update vendor account using the invoice date. Select this option if you want the vendor invoice and associated tax to be tax to use the specified source document date when you post the vendor invoice. Select this option if you want the vendor invoice and associated tax to use the specified source document date when you post the invoice. Okay. Clear this option to use the date when invoice is posted. Instead, this option will work with the calculation date. Okay. Actually, this is for tax calculation. In a tax code, you can give two versions. Suppose that from January to March 31st, assume that January to March 31st, tax rate is 5%. From April 1st, they have updated the tax rate, and from then it is 6% until future date, some future date. Suppose if you are posting the invoice in between such particular dates, like in end of the March or in April, so which rate system have to consider? Does it have to consider the rate according to the invoice date or according to the posting date? Suppose if you are posting the invoice on April 2nd, but the invoice date was mentioned to be March 30. So it will fall into the previous slab rate like 5%. So here, if we select this option, update vendor accounting using the invoice date. So according to that invoice date on the invoice, it will consider the tax percentage like 5% or 6%, only when there are such variances in the tax. If you don't select it, it will select the tax rate according to the posting date. Posting date means whenever you post the invoice according to that date, the updated tax value will be considered. Or if you're posting it for a past date, again, the past rate will be considered. So if at all there is multiple versions in a sales tax code, I'll show you going further in configuring the tax module. I'll show you how there will be two different codes according to mean. There will be a single amount only, but by date it might change. Next here I have one more option, post to charge accounting ledger. Select this option to post to a charge account in the ledger. Normally without selecting also it will get posted to ledger account only. I think this is for not automatic charges, this charges adjustments. Select this option to post a charge account to a ledger. Usually charges are posted to ledger account only, right? So whatever the account we give, the 4 types of charges will be posted accordingly. Not sure about this parameter. That should be the one. I mean, usually whatever we configure in the charge code, that will get affected once you post the charges. So display invoice totals on pending invoices list. Normally we can also keep the pending invoices, right? We have a form for accessing pending invoices. So in that pending invoices, it is asking if there are any purchase orders included in that pending invoice, or if we have created an invoice for a purchase order and left over. So what is the existing total on the PO should be shown up on the pending vendor invoice. It is saying yes. If you enable this, yes, it will display. Select this option to it's saying this. If you select this option, it may lead to slower performance when saving vendor invoices. See, if it have to automatically update the total amount on the pending vendor invoices, it have to recalculate all the balances on the invoice, like the subtotal amount, charges amount, tax amount, and all, and then it will update the balances every time you refresh. So it is saying it might slow down a little. That is why they have disabled this option by default. You can enable this if you want to, this option, so that whenever you have any pending invoice in the pending vendor invoices menu, it will automatically show the total amount of the invoice. So usually that menu will be here. I'll show you. You know it already. We have used it earlier for creation of invoice separately without linking to PO, and then we have linked a PO. We also done it for the consolidation of invoices or creating a single invoice for multiple purchase orders. Here you see pending vendor invoices option, this one in this menu. You can see the pending vendor invoices that were just created and not yet posted. So for them, it will show the total amount. That's all. Other than this, invoice groups, as I told you, we are not using it, or neither any of the clients are using it. So I'll just skip this one. We'll go for invoice validation, which is very, very important. And we have already discussed this. All the things in this we have already discussed, like enabling invoice validation and then invoice totals matching, quantity matching, charges matching, and this one includes three-way matching, wherein you have to, during the confirmation of product receipt, it includes three-way matching as well. So you have this parameter, automatically update invoice header status. If you enable this one, you know, in the invoice, whenever you have to post invoice or made any updates to invoice, it will automatically run the match status. Update match status will automatically run by itself without you being clicking it manually. It will automatically update, and you don't no more see that button if you enable this option. Okay, if you don't enable this, you can manually click on update match status for every invoice that you're going to post. So that's what. And here you can see this one. If at all there are any discrepancies and there is a failure in matching for the invoices. So in that case, how system have to deal with such invoices. So here I see allow with warning or require approval. Usually when we use require approval, we might have to approve it. I showed you where we can approve the discrepancies for a vendor invoice. There you can approve it, give the approver name, and you can give some comments and you can approve it. If not, if you say that allow with warning means it will just give you a warning that there are discrepancies or matching issues, but still it will allow you to post the invoice. If you say that require approval means you should definitely give approval. If you don't give approval, you can't post it. It says that there are matching discrepancies and it cannot be posted or invoice cannot be posted. Okay, this menu is very important as a topic, as I told you previously or explained you. Invoice validation, they might ask in interview what is invoice validation, or they might ask you what is two-way matching, three-way matching, or they might ask you what is matching policy in accounts payable. So you might have to explain everything. If they say about invoice validation, say that there is the concept of invoice validation, wherein we have three different methods like invoice totals matching, prices and quantity matching, and charges matching. Again, under prices and quantity matching, we have two-way matching and three-way matching. So you can say what is invoice totals matching, charges matching, and two-way and three-way matching. If in case they only ask you what is two-way matching and three-way matching and differentiate them, you can explain only about two-way matching and three-way matching and how it matches. So I told you the definitions, right? It into what it does in two-way matching and three-way matching. Just focus on it. It's a compulsory question in interview mostly. Okay. Other than that, I have ledger and sales tax, one important menu as well, where we normally give posting profile. See, we generally configure the posting profile, wherein we link the main accounts to the vendors or the vendor groups or to the accounts payable to general ledger. We have a link in a posting profile. But once after creating posting profile or whatever will be your default posting profile, you have to give it here for posting, because system will consider the accounts from there only, right? So without giving here in the parameters, then it will not allow you to post any transaction in the accounts payable. It says that posting profile is missing. And again, you have to come back here to the accounts payable parameters and you have to assign this posting profile general, or may it be any other default posting profile or the main posting profile. Generally give it here. Then you have an option primary item posting, primary receipt posting, primary discount posting. Mostly this receipt posting and discount posting accounts are taken automatically from the item group. Okay, since you have given item here, it will take from the item group, right? For item, we have associated many accounts for different situations. For product receipt, we have given some accounts. For invoice posting, we have given some accounts. So that accounts will be picked automatically from the item or the item group that is associated to the item, since you have given it as item. What if I give it as vendor? So if I give it as vendor, again for vendor also I can give some accounts. So that will be somewhere here in the vendor groups. For a group of vendors, I can give main accounts. I think here click on vendor groups in the top. Here I can give item posting or default account setup. So if I give default account setup, so for vendors also I can give some accounts. Suppose for vendors, or I mean here for vendor groups I can give this item posting. Item posting is generally it's like item group only. Again, you can see these details. So for that specific vendor, you can give specific accounts. So generally, if at all you are doing any transaction, it will pick that particular account that you give here, but not most of them or any of them will use this vendor specific accounts. They will only use this item accounts here in item group. Whatever they configure, system will pick those accounts only, and mostly they will follow the same. Other than that, we have vendor option also. Sometimes when system is not considering item accounts, you can check these parameters that if it is given here right as item or not for both of them. Okay. And this is posting profile for promissory notes. Normally for promissory notes also we can create posting profile. Whoever use promissory note generally create a posting profile called as promissory note posting profile. So they will use this or give here promissory note posting profile. So there will be separate accounts within the promissory note posting profile other than accounts payable account. It will consider that account for temporarily like a bridging account. And after you have cleared the promissory note, generally it will settle the two accounts. Just like in the prepayment advance payments, it will select the prepayment account first, right? Later when we settle invoice with prepayment, it will post a settlement entry. In the same way we'll get settlement entries in the case of promissory notes also. But not most of them will deal with promissory notes. It's a hectic setup, like 10 steps you might have to follow for completing both configuration as well as an operation scenario in promissory notes. Let's skip it. I mean, we did not discuss it, neither it's not of no use or no one will question in interview about this promissory notes. Coming to payment, yes, if at all you want to make any prepayments, so which is the posting profile or common posting profile that you want to use for prepayments? If you are using a posting a prepayment journal in accounts payable, I mean vendor payment journal, once you enable that as a prepayment journal, you will automatically see this posting profile changing from general to prepayment. I showed you. So in that case, in order to automatically show up this posting profile, you might have to give it here for prepayment transactions. And sales tax on prepayment in payment journal. If you enable this, every time you post any prepayment journal, there should be sales tax calculated. So mostly you have sales tax calculated. In some jurisdictions or countries, you have sales tax to be calculated and posted on payment transaction. First you will pay the, so I would say like whenever you pay it, automatically you pay the sales tax also to the vendor. Before you, I mean, without invoicing only, will make a sales tax payment along with your prepayment, advance payment. It's a kind of advance sales tax also, but it's only specific to certain countries. If you don't want to make any advance payments, mostly in Middle East they will have this advance payment on prepayments, advance tax payments on prepayments. But if you don't want any sales tax calculation on prepayments, you can set it as no or leave it as no. And this is a posting profile as I told you. And warn if payment proposal uses multiple methods of payment. So we have an option called as payment proposal, wherein we can run payment proposal for all the existing invoices. I'll show you maybe after some time. So in that case, if there are multiple methods of payment used in a single payment proposal, where you can settle all the invoices at a time, if it is using a different methods of payment, it will give you a warning that this payment proposal is using different methods of payment. If you say no, means it doesn't consider the method of payment generally. I mean, it will consider for the payment transaction, but still it will not give you any warning message even though if you have multiple methods of payment within a proposal. I'll show you that proposal option. So just someone remind me once after completing these parameters, we'll work on it. I think we left over it. So this is for prepayment invoicing. So the prepayment invoicing account normally takes from here, this posting profile that you give here. Prepayment account will be taken from this posting profile, prepayment invoice. Prepayment application policy, yes. Do you want the prepayment invoice that is paid has to be automatically applied to the original invoice, or do you want it through a notification? Notification means it generally says that there is a pending prepayment that is on prepayment pending on the invoice. You can settle that prepayment to the invoice like that. You can, I mean, it will give a notification. If you say automatic means it will automatically settle the I mean, it will automatically settle the open prepayment invoice to the original invoice automatically, and in the lines it will show up the deducted amount of prepayment in the original invoice line. You can see, right, once you apply prepayment, so that will automatically get added. If not, nothing. So here I have some options for cash flow forecast. So for cash flow forecast, you can select the usual time intervals and terms of payments. So it's only for someone who would usually have this cash flow statement in place. So to understand what will be the, I mean, payment date or due dates for, or when we have to pay the amounts and all, the can be seen here. I mean, the accounts payable cash flow, the payable side cash flows can be decided with the given terms of payments here. So time between delivery date and invoice date. You can select a terms of payment, usual time between delivery date and invoice date, so that your accrual to invoice date will, I mean, normally your accrual entry will be posted on delivery, right? So the date between that can be calculated. Typical time between purchase order delivery date and the invoice date. In terms of payment given by vendors to describe the time between invoice date and due date, you can give here time between invoice due date and payment date. Select a terms of payment to describe the typical time gap between invoice due date and payment date. Normally invoices are paid on due date. If you have any grace days, you can give like 2 days or 3 days here in this. Liquidity account for payments, you can give it as a cash account or bank account normally, so that that account balances will be considered for payment. Suppose if the liquidity amount in the cash account is more than that we have to pay for the vendors, then you have a good cash flow or good working capital management, I would say. If the liquid funds are low compared to that we have to pay in the month, then you might have to borrow money or might have to depend on the receivable amounts to pay the payables, kind of. So percentage of amount to allocate to cash flow forecast. You can create percentage. I think it will show empty actually. Yes. So that's only for when you maintain cash flow forecast. Other than this, we have one more option actually. When sales tax has to be calculated, we have a process in accounts payable, which normally most of them does not follow. Vendor invoice, register, pool and approval process. So it is also same like invoicing process only. If time permits, I will show you that one as well. In that case, vendor invoice register tax has to be calculated at the place of register or approval journal. So we have two steps. First is register, next is approval. So at which place tax has to be calculated and accounted is what system is asking. Generally, they do it on register itself. So keep sales tax adjustments for PO invoices. So once you register it, during approval, you can make adjustments on sales taxes, or you can also make or alter the tax amounts calculated. So it is asking me, do you want to keep such tax adjustments for PO invoices or no? So if you enable this, you can't override the taxes normally. If you disable this, you can override or change the tax amounts from registered to approval. So these parameters are only these two parameters are for that registration and approval process. 1 second, guys. Hello, yeah, back. Sorry. So we have one more option here, credit rating. So I know we can give credit. We know we can give credit rating or credit limits to the vendor. So in every vendor master for a vendors, we can give credit limits. So how that credit limit type has to be considered while you are doing any transaction, it is asking here. So for every vendor that I would create, we have this option of credit, actually credit rating. Here you can see in the miscellaneous details, we can see this credit rating and credit limit. Suppose I say 1 lakh is the credit limit for this vendor. And if my credit limit exceeds, I have already open invoices for 1 lakh. Okay. And if I'm doing one more invoice exceeding this credit limit, system will stop me saying that you have exceeded the maximum credit limit given by the vendor to you, because 1 lakh is pending. If you pay 50,000 here, again you will have 50,000 limit. So you can do invoicing up to another 50,000. But if you exceed the open pending amount that has to be paid to the vendor of up to 1 lakh, you can't do any more invoices further because you have exceeded the credit limit. If you settle that, again you can do the invoices for that limit or up to that limit, whatever is remaining. So that is controlled if at all you give some parameters here. So if you say none means even though you give any credit limit here, it will does not consider or doesn't really system will doesn't really consider this credit limit. If at all it is given as none, even though you give credit limit amount here. But if we select balance means here, balance means it will consider the 1 lakh balance. If it is exceeding 1 rupee also the purchase order amount, it will say credit limit is exceeding. And there is one option called balance plus packing slip or product receipt. So that 1 lakh amount plus packing slip and product receipt, it will consider all of them. And you have balance plus all. Balance plus all means it will consider the balance on the invoice. I mean, sorry, it's on the purchase order as well as the charges plus taxes, everything it will consider when it say all means. So when you say packing slip plus product receipt means it will not consider that charges and taxes usually. It will only consider the packing slip amount or the product receipt amount or the amount of goods that you are receiving. That's all. So usually they'll have none or balance plus all, either only two of them. None means it will not consider the credit rating at all. Balance plus all means it will consider everything. So the pending balance plus the new purchase orders that are created. And if it is exceeding the credit limit, yes, it will say that this is exceeding the maximum credit limit that is given by the vendor to you or offered by the vendor to you. It will just throw an error message. If not, you can say it as none. That's all. Other than that, we have some settlements. So we have an option of automatic settlement actually. If you enable this automatic settlement option, whenever you do any payment transactions, it will get automatically settled to the open invoices. So it will not consider to which invoice it has to get settled, but it will get settled to any of the open invoices that are there in the vendor transactions list. If you post any payment transaction. But if you settle it to a specific invoice during payment only, it will get settled to that invoice only. But if you post any open payment transactions, it will get automatically settled to the open invoice transactions. In such case of automatic settlements, how the cash discount has to be followed and all parameters are here. Cash discount administration, unspecific and specific you have. So specify whether either obtainable cash discount is regarded as a payment on account or is lacking payment when an invoice is settled. The setting is used when the settlement payment amount, which includes the cash discount, does not equal the invoice that is being settled. If the unspecific option is selected, cash discount difference is handled in following ways. Applicable cash discount is posted in a different legal entity than the overpayment is. Customer cash discount that is specified in the account for automatic transactions page is used. If there is a multiple cash discount, for example, of an overpayment is settled with multiple invoices, the adjustment to the discount is from the invoice that was most recently settled to the first discount. The first discount is used when there are multiple discount levels. Paid in 5 days, the vendor allows a 10% discount if invoice is paid. Okay. Specific option is selected. Customer cash discount account that is specified in the accounts payable transaction will be used. So usually it is saying that there are two ways of maintain or administration for this cash discount. So actually when you are making any open payment and it is automatically getting settled to any open vendor invoice or open purchase order invoice. So this system unspecific and specific will handle the settlement of cash discount settlement. If there is any cash discount applicable on the invoice, it will consider that specific amount of cash discount with that payment transaction that is settled to the open invoice. Whenever you post any payment transaction, it will automatically settle, right? There the cash discount amount will be automatically calculated and settled, or cash discount entry, right? So it will automatically consider that. But this is where in a situation where if a single payment transaction is being settled to multiple invoices which have different cash discount. Suppose there are 4 open invoices for total of 20,000 and there is a cash discount code applicable for, I mean, for 4 invoices there are different cash discount codes like 5%, 10%, 15% and another 10% like that. So in that case, if you settling or if you posted a payment transaction which eventually gets settled with all these 4 open invoices, suppose if the payment amount is like 20,000, and how that cash discount on the 4 open invoices has to be handled or posted is generally being guided by this unspecific and specific. Generally, they'll select this unspecific only when you have the automatic settlement. Most of them will not automatic settlement option. Only in retail companies where there are lot of invoices on lot of payments on daily basis, they will use this automatic settlements option. Other than this, generally they don't use this automatic settlement. And we have this overpayment and underpayment parameters for this one, maximum penny difference between a payment and a total of an optional number of invoices when vendor invoices are settled. If penny difference is equal or less than penny difference that is specified in the field, penny difference is posted automatically to the penny difference ledger accounts. In case of settlements, if there are foreign currencies or anything, if there are any penny differences between the invoice and payment, or for automatic transaction, if there are any penny differences, how much limit I can allow, like I can allow up to 10 cents maximum penny difference, and that difference amount will usually be posted into penny difference account that we will give in the accounts for automatic transactions in general ledger. I think we know that accounts already. And other than that, this one maximum overpayment and underpayment. How much maximum overpayment and underpayment I can do for an invoice? So mostly, if at all this overpayment and underpayment is done, this is posted into underpayment and overpayment accounts. So in case actually, if at all a payment transaction has to be settled with an invoice, it will also consider the criteria of the invoice amount and the payment amount. Normally 1,000 invoice will be settled to 1,000 payment transaction usually. So how much less or more if at all the payment is having like 1,002? So does system have to consider for automatic settlement of this payment transaction to that amount of invoice which is having 1,000? So you can give such maximum overpayment and underpayment amounts for invoices to be settled. Normally you can also settle the invoices, I mean payment transaction to the invoices with underpayment also. I mean, if at all the invoice is for 1,000 and you have paid only 990 and you are settling it, so sometimes it also gets settled to the, I mean, invoice, but the remaining $10 amount will mostly be added to discount previously, but it will get also added to underpayment account if you give the underpayment here. And you might have to give the overpayment and underpayment accounts also in the accounts for automatic transactions, I guess. Doesn't really follow. I mean, the most of them doesn't really follow this, but I think this one are important. Calculate cash discount for partial payments. So it is set as no actually. Calculate cash discount for credit notes. It is set as yes. So calculate cash discount for partial payments means suppose that there is an invoice of 1,000 and let's assume that there is an invoice of 1,000 and there is a discount code of 10% on this invoice. 10% means $100 discount. Okay, if I'm paying this invoice within the specific discount date or cash discount allowed date, I'll get $100 discount and I can pay 900 only on this invoice. But what I'm doing is before the specific date of the invoice, I mean the
cash discount date, I am paying only half of the amount or $500 only. So if I am paying only 500, I won't get cash discount of 10% or neither I'll get any cash discount. If at all I settle the invoice totally for 1000 amount within the specified cash discount date, then only I'll get $100 discount. So if I pay 500, system will take all that 500 as payment only. It will not give any discount for that. Next time when you are making another 500 payment, 400 will be considered as payment and 100 will be considered as a discount because you are settling the invoice on a total. I mean the total amount you are paying, or I mean in the second time you are paying the complete amount, right? So that's why it will consider. But this parameter that is given here will guide you to calculate discounts on the partial payment also. Suppose for initially if I am paying 500 means out of which 400 will it will consider as payment transaction, 100 will it will consider, sorry, 450 it will consider as payment transaction and 50 it will consider as discount. So next time when you are paying another 500, 450 will be the original payment and 50 will be the discount, which will eventually make the total discount to 100. So in such kind of partial payments, discount has to be calculated or not according to the discount date can be given here. I mean, this parameter will guide. Most of them doesn't really calculate depreciation on partial, sorry, discounts on partial payments. They will do it on the whole amount. If at all you are settling the whole amount of invoice, you will get discount. Maybe if you are settling it in intervals also, if you are settling it within the specific cash discount time that is given, then you can take the discount or you can calculate the discount or post the discount and make a less payment. So that's how Dynamics works. Then calculate cash discounts for credit notes. Does system want to calculate cash discounts on credit notes as well? Yes, you can say that. So just like if on your vendor invoice, there will be cash discount calculated, right? If at all there is any vendor invoice posted and payment done, cash discount will be same settled. In the same way, whenever you create a credit note, same way cash discount also will be considered. And when you receive refunds, vendor will send the refund amount excluding the cash discount, because during payment you also made the same, right? Excluding the cash discount, you have paid it. And again during refund also he will exclude that cash discount and he will pay it and you can settle it to the credit note. Or for credit notes also you can calculate discount. That's what it is saying. Next, discount offset account. Use main account or vendor main account for vendor discount accounts on the invoice lines. Mostly use main accounts for vendor discount means we have created this discount codes, right? In that discount codes you will have this account, main account we will give, right? Vendor cash discounts account. So that will consider whenever you have any vendor cash discount in place, and when you give that vendor, I mean cash discount code, on that cash discount code whatever is there on the account, it will consider from that account. That account will be considered actually for cash discount calculation. If there is no cash discount code given and if you're adding manual discount, then it will normally consider the account from accounts for automatic transactions. From there we have a account. From there it will consider. Then brokers and royalties, one procedure we have, not most of them will use it. This is only for certain service sector industries like insurance companies and theaters, movie theaters like that. We have this broker and royalty. It's not a necessary setup to discuss, but it's a very big setup even the broker and royalties concept. So I'm skipping it. Other than this, I have number sequences which are in place. So number sequences for various different situations, for vendor accounts, for one-time supplier, for payment voucher, for closing voucher, for settlement vouchers we have, for invoice voucher, product receipt voucher. So mostly all the related vouchers or number sequences for the various actions or transactions in accounts payable will be here in the number sequences under accounts payable parameters. Okay, that would be all about accounts payable parameters. Just try to see them how they are working, or you can just keep an idea about each parameter. So these are just the controls so that whenever you enter a project or when in interviews they will ask something, can we post invoices, duplicate invoices? So you can say that there is a parameter that controls it. They will ask about the invoice validation parameters. You can say it. If they ask about posting profiles, you can say that you can assign posting profiles in that parameters. Okay. Other than that, I have. Hmm, I said I'll show you something else. So that's in accounts payable, payments, payment journal, where I can run a proposal for open vendor invoices. See, there can be multiple open invoices for a vendor. So I can run a payment proposal for bringing all those invoices for payment. So for that, I can follow this process called as payment proposal. So I think I have explained you earlier with the with the methods of payments, how the payment proposal will create lines. So invoice weekly. If the due date is in the same week, it will create a single line. If the due date is in same month, it will create a single payment line for all the consolidated invoice amount. Or if it will create single invoice for single payment lines for single invoices separately. I told you, I think, while we created method of payments like checks and all, then let me show you how it works. Okay, see, for suppose for a specific vendor, we have certain open invoices that has to be settled. Okay, you can bring all those invoices for settlement by using this process called payment proposal. Here you see this option, right? Payment proposal. You can click on create payment proposal. Here it asks me, so select the invoices by due date or cash discount date or due date and cash discount date. Means if the cash discount date is expiring, it will consider the cash discount date also for bringing the invoices. But if you specifically say due date, means according to the due date, whatever is falling due, it will consider the due date. So you can give the dates here. If you give the dates, it will consider the due date of the invoice for as the criteria. If you give cash discount, means it will consider the cash discount date as the criteria for bringing the invoices. I'll give due date. So starting from 1st of October to 31st of October, what are falling due, I'll just take it as a, so I want these invoices to be brought up here for payment. So minimum payment date, I'll say 31st. I'll pay it by 31st. Amount limit, I can give some amount limit. If I don't want any amount limit, I won't give it. Create payments without invoice preview. Means payment transactions will automatically get created here, but I want preview. So I'll show you how preview looks like. So I'm disabling this parameter. Here records to include, you can include one specific vendor or a specific method of payment. If I select a specific vendor, it will bring the transactions for open invoices for that vendor only. If I select a specific method of payment also along with the vendor. So for that vendor in the open invoices, what are the invoices that are linked to a specific method of payment like check payment or any other payment? So accordingly, it will bring those invoices. I'll just filter it and I'll give a vendor account here. And a method of payment, I can give one or two, but if I give a specific method of payment to the invoices which are linked to check payment, all those invoices will be brought up for payment. So I'll just give a vendor account as Maruti Suzuki and I'll click on OK. Method of payment, I'm not giving any. So may it be any method of payment, or if the method of payment is there or not, I want all the transactions to be, all the invoice transactions of this vendor, whichever are due in this particular dates in between this date has to be appeared. So I'll just select on OK here. So that it will create a preview menu before, and once after we click on OK for the preview, it will bring the payment transaction lines here automatically. I'll show you. So this is how the preview look like. See, there are quite few invoices that has to be paid to the vendor in this particular month. All of them are, we are paying them at that 31st of October payment date. See, you can see the due date of those invoices. All of them are within this month only. 4th, 15th, 15th, 20th, and 31st are the due dates, original due dates of those invoices, and these are the invoices, as I can see. And this is a payment transaction, actually 1500 positive amount, you can see, right? And you don't see any invoice here. So you can remove this payment transaction because we are not settling any payment transaction. We are just trying to settle the open invoices. See, all the invoices are for negative amounts, means we have to pay them. So you can see there is a method of payment called check for the invoice here. One invoice, there is a method of payment called check. Suppose if I go to this check, let's see. Here I gave a period as total. So I explained earlier when I created method of payments, total or invoice or date or week. Invoice means for each invoice it will create a payment line. Date means what for the for the invoices that are falling due on that particular day, it will create a single line for those two invoices or three invoices that are having same due date. That are having different due dates, it will create another payment line. Week means for the invoices that are falling due in that specific week, it will create a consolidated payment line for those invoices. If there are invoices that are belonging to two different weeks, it will create two different payment lines. Total means for all the total amount of this invoices, it will create a single payment line. If at all for all the invoices, we are using method of payment as check. So I'll show you how to do that. See, I selected total here, which means I want all the total invoice amount, like the total invoices amount is like 2000, 32,000. So this is the total amount, right? So for this total amount, I want a single transaction. So I'll select method of payment as check for all these transactions. See here, check, check, and check for all the invoices. It is check payment only. And for the check payment, I have given as total, right? So I'm assuming that if at all I click on create payments, it should create a single payment line for the total amount that I have to pay for all these 5 invoices. Because in the payment method, I have selected this period as total right here, period as total. So that is why I'll just click on create payments here. Let's see how system would create a payment line automatically. See here, it created a single payment line for the total amount that we have to pay on the invoices, 73,000. So it just operation completed. OK. The total amount of those 5 invoices is 73,000. So it is debiting the vendor automatically for the 73,000 here. And you can select the offset account as bank account and generate a check and pay it if you want to. So this is how it will bring the payment line for if I select the method of period in the method of payment as total. I'll show you a different one. If I'll select it according to the invoice, how the payment lines will be created, I'll show you. So I'm going to payment proposal, create payment proposal again, and I'll run it for the same criteria. Since I've deleted it again, it will bring the same preview menu for all the same invoices. If they are paid, it will not bring them again. Since they are open it, so I'll just remove this prepayment line which was paid already. For these are the 5 invoices. And in this method of payment check, what I'll do is I'll change this total to invoice. So specifically for each invoice, I need a payment transaction. For each invoice, I need a specific payment line. So I need to get 5 payment lines for each invoice. I changed it. So now I'll click on create payments. But it's bringing the same actually. I think there is a refresh issue. Let me try it once again. OK. Payment proposal, create payment proposal, click on OK. Now remove this payment line. OK. And check this method of payment here. It's given as invoice. OK, all good. Then I'll select as create payments. Oh, something wrong. Yeah, not wrong. See, I can see enough all the 5 invoices, 5 different payment lines for 5 invoices separately. So for 5 of them, we have to generate 5 different checks again. You have to select or generate 5 different checks if at all you are using 5 payment lines, but you are paying all the consolidated amount of 73,000 in a single payment line like earlier, then you have to generate one check for the total amount of 73,000. So that's a procedure. So this is how this payment proposal works. So I'll show you something else, just an example for the method of payment check again. Wait. Yep. Method of payments for check, I'll change it back from invoice to total. Okay, for electronic, I'll change it on invoice. Okay, so I'll again run the payment proposal here, create payment proposal. Okay, for one vendor only for all the open invoices. It will bring the same list for me. See here, this is a payment transaction. I'll just remove this from here. So there are 5 invoices for, so I gave the check this one as total already. Okay, so for 2 invoices, I'll change it to electronic. So for electronic payments, it's on basis of invoice. It have to create 2 payment lines. For these 3 invoices, I gave check, right? So for 3 has to be consolidated into a single payment line. So 39,000 has to be consolidated into a single payment line for which we pay a check. For the remaining 2 invoices, it should create 2 separate payment transactions, 2,000 and 32,000. Since for electronic, we have given it as on the basis of invoice. Okay, just click on create payments. See, there are 3 lines, 39,000 for a consolidated invoice amount where the method of payment is check, and for electronic for the 2 invoices, they are created on the basis of invoice. For each invoice, there is a payment line here. So that's how this payment proposal works. Okay, you can also try something with the payment proposal with different options and let me know if you face any difficulty. I just want to show you this because when you go into support, there will be certain issues or things that are around this payment proposal normally. So that's why. Anything else, guys? That would be all for today's class. I think it's 57 minutes. If you have any doubt, do let me know either in parameters or here in this payment proposal. So usually when there are a lot of invoices that has to be paid, and you can run payment proposal for such invoices. Generally, you can give a date criteria for the invoices that are falling due in specific date. Suppose in this week, suppose if I want to pay the invoices that are falling due in this week, I can select this week starting from Monday to the Friday. Starting from Monday to Friday, whatever that are falling due. If I want to pay all of them, I'll just select them or run a payment proposal. So only the invoices that are due, falling due between these dates will be picked up for payment. Or in the preview menu, it will generally show those invoices. And within that, if you want to eliminate any, you can delete or remove those lines from that preview. And you can give the specific methods of payment that you want to use, and so that lines will be created accordingly. Okay. So it will reduce some time for the users to make payment transactions at a time or quickly. This proposal. So I'll just stop the recording until here.